Ce qui se passe dans les bois est un véritable podcast sur la criminalité. Nous discutons d'événements qui sont souvent de nature violente. La discrétion de l'auditeur est conseillée. What Happens in the Woods is a true crime podcast. We discuss events that are often violent in nature. Listener's discretion is advised.
Hello. Welcome back to the woods for another new episode in our 6th season. Hi, Bryce.
Hello.
What are your thoughts? What are your updates?
My updates so
Yes.
soon?
Yeah.
Let's see. I know I haven't discussed it in a while, but Canada is still in the lead.
Okay. So for those who don't know, that is our intro.
Our disclaimer.
Yeah, our disclaimer. Once upon a time, it was changing every week.
Yeah.
So we had the disclaimer in different languages.
I
but
promise you there are different languages.
Canada's been on top for months now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. What else you got? Any other updates?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tom Jones died.
I know. That's not crime related in any way, though.
It's not, but it breaks my heart.
I don't think you care.
Excuse me? Jess and I had this huge debate. I wouldn't call it an argument, but who sung the song Kiss better?
Oh, God. Yeah. I think you just want to disagree.
No.
I honestly think you just disagree to be contrary.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
I still in my heart, that's what I believe.
I love the way Tom Jones sings that song.
I don't know who the fuck you are sometimes. I don't know. And this wasn't recent, you guys. Like, this is like early in our marriage. This is 20 years ago, probably. Yeah. And I don't know. It confused me then. It confuses me now. But you go ahead and be wrong. Leave a comment if you guys, who do you think? Prince or Tom Jones? Who did it better?
Tom Jones.
I actually met him, though.
I did too.
When did you meet him?
I met him in San Francisco when I was in high school.
Oh. I don't remember you telling me that.
It wasn't even like I shook his hand for like a second.
Yeah.
He was just coming through. He had 2 big bodyguards.
Yeah.
I think he was in the Embarcadero.
Oh, well. Yeah, he's a legend.
Yeah.
That's not good.
In other news.
Yeah. Oh, are you done?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you had other news.
No, I didn't.
You said in other news.
No, that was my segue.
Oh, your segue to handing it back over? Is that what oh, okay. Well, just a reminder, we do have our 100th episode coming up. So September 1st, we are going live. We're going to go live on YouTube and Instagram. Bryce tells me it can be done, so I'm going to assume that it can be.
It can be done.
Yeah, and thanks to Killer Bee Beth for being the 100th person to subscribe on YouTube. Woo. So that you made that happen. You made that happen, Beth. You're the real one. Speaking of them, they have their serial killer September coming up.
Oh, that's right. Their favorite.
Yeah, they hate it. They absolutely hate it. I feel like that's all we do is serial killers. And today might be another one of those, but they do not. They don't focus on that at all, which is just goes to show you, unfortunately, there's enough different crime. There are enough people in the world who commit different crimes that are horrific, that are not serial killers.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're coming up, and they started doing survivor stories over on their Patreon. So the month of September is Serial Killer September for their regular feed, and then Patreon. So definitely go check them out. You know, anybody who listens to us knows that we love them. And that's all I've got. We can get into the case I have for us today, if you are ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, well, let's go. So our episode is focused on an unsolved crime from Oregon. It's definitely been covered in many different podcasts and news outlets. And there was one very strong suspect that authorities kind of had their sights on for this crime. And he was known to the community. However, nothing was definitively proven in the case. I also wonder, and I'll be interested to get your take on this. It seemed to be a case, and I say this just to play devil's advocate. See, it seemed to be a case where maybe they were hyper focused on one suspect, and I really can't see that they did due diligence to look at any other suspects.
Okay.
I don't even see any mention of any other suspects. And when I get more into it, it's a little alarming, to be honest, because there was nothing. Obviously, it's unsolved. Yeah. So whatever they had that tied him or didn't tie him to the crime was not enough. Okay. So I'll be curious to get everybody's take on that, if they think that maybe that plays a part in this. Let me take you back to August 30th, 1974, when Richard and Belinda Cowden took their small family camping in the Siskiyou Mountains near Copper, Oregon. It was a last-minute trip, and Richard and Belinda, their young son David, who was 5 years old at the time, and their young daughter Melissa, who was just 5 months old at the time. They also had their family dog, who was he was a basset hound named Droopy, super cute. They made the quick trip from White City, Oregon, to go to a camping area where they had been before. Richard worked for a logging company as a truck driver and had managed to get off a few days around the holiday, and it was Labor Day weekend. And they had plans to do some home improvement, but that fell through. So this last minute decision, they decided to go camping, and they were avid campers. So they just quickly packed up gear and were on their way. Belinda's mother lived not far from where they were camping near Carberry Creek. It was planned that on the night of Sunday, September 1st, they were going to have dinner at her home. And they didn't show. So her mom got worried and headed out to the campsite to make sure that everything was okay. When she got there, she found out that everything was not okay. She describes the scene that clearly tells investigators something went wrong. It was basically like the family of four just left everything and vanished. So the diaper bag was still there with all of the things that they would have needed for Melissa, the baby.
Okay.
There were many personal belongings, such as Richard's wristwatch, his wallet that had money in it, Belinda's purse, also all of her contents, money, IDs, things, all of their clothing that they had packed, except for their swim gear. There was even the keys to their truck that they drove up. So it was a 1956 Ford truck. That was all left. There was no sign of the dog. So the family and the dog, nowhere to be found whatsoever. Belinda's mother waited for an hour at the campsite, kind of walking around, trying to see if she could find anything, but nobody showed up. She decided that she needed to reach out to law enforcement, so she contacted the sheriffs to report that she could not find the family. Mm-hmm. At this point in the day, it was getting dark, so there was only so much they could do. It's, out in the wilderness, you can't really, flashlights in the 70s were not that great. But they did come out to the campsite, and they don't find anything other than they're just not there. Mm-hmm. It's odd, but they just seem to disappear. There's nothing at the campsite that shows that there was any violent, no struggle, no blood. It doesn't seem as if anything bad has happened at that site, at least.
Not at the site.
Right.
Okay.
So they actually delayed doing like a huge search for about a day because they didn't see any reason of foul play. They didn't suspect anything of foul play. While they didn't do a huge search, at first, authorities did question workers at a store nearby. So the Copper General Store, which was down the road from where the campsite was. And it is believed that the last known sighting of Richard and his son David was at this store at around 9 a.m. that morning on Sunday the 1st, when the two walked up to the store on foot to buy milk. So that gallon of milk was actually found on a picnic table, half empty, at the campsite when it was searched. On Monday, September 2nd, it quickly became apparent that whatever happened to the family was not good. Their dog was found outside the general store trying to get in. The Cowdens, however, were nowhere near. So search and rescue quickly began. This is still considered one of the largest in Oregon history. Hundreds of volunteers, along with family members, friends of Richard and Belinda, the United States Forest Service, the Oregon National Guard, and Explorer Scouts all searched, covering a 25-mile radius. There were also planes and helicopters that flew over the area, even when they could, using infrared equipment to try to pick up any signs of the Cowden family. There was nothing. There was nothing that was found, and the search officially ended on September 7th.
Wait, when did it start?
The 2nd.
The second. Okay.
5 days. Friends and family were obviously distraught. They could not leave it, so they kept searching for answers. They continued to search in the area. They would, on the weekends, they would take vacation days, come and search in this area. And, they were hoping to find signs that the family was out there somewhere. Mm-hmm. But as it passed, more time passes, your hope of finding somebody alive also diminishes. There seemed to be little reason for why the family would have disappeared. Authorities were looking into possible explanations to see, what might have happened. They did think that maybe there was an issue where maybe they went swimming and they all drowned. Mm-hmm. That was one of the possibilities.
Where were they swimming? The Bermuda Triangle?
There's a creek. There's the Carberry Creek.
Okay.
That's nearby. I think there's several rivers. This is like in Siskiyou Mountain Range. So it's by Klamath. It's like there's several waterways that kind of go through this area, apparently. They could have just been swimming somewhere nearby. And, rapids can't always judge how bad they're going to be. I don't know. Maybe there was an undertow. I don't know. Current was more than what they thought it was going to be. It was just a thought. They didn't find anything that would confirm that. Yeah. But there also just didn't seem to be any reason why anybody would want them dead or would have taken them. Mm-hmm. So they, Belinda and Richard seemed to be happy in their marriage. Yeah. They were, they had their little family that was growing. They were not in debt. They didn't seem to have like an at-risk lifestyle, no drug use, no, gambling issues, no odd things. They were just your everyday couple with 2.5 kids, It was nothing that anybody could think of. Why would somebody want to come and harm this family? Or where would they have gone? Why would they have disappeared? They weren't involved in anything. And there was also a question, what's the motive, right? Yeah. There's no robbery. Everything of value was left at the campsite, even including a truck that was in good working order, even if it was 20 years old. Mm-hmm. there was money left in the wallet, in the purse. There was the watch was, a good quality watch. Somebody could have sold it. They had camping gear. So who leaves this? Who doesn't take an opportunity to take any of these things?
Yeah.
Nobody really could figure it out. There were really no good answers. It wouldn't be until April 12th, 1975, that two people who were out searching, like mining for gold near the creek, discovered the body of an adult male tied to a tree. The body was in a state of decomposition and had been out in the elements for many months. Nearby, there was a small cave that was found that had been partially covered with rocks. And inside that cave, there were 3 bodies found. So there was that of an adult female, a child, and an infant. Oh. Yeah. Autopsies were completed, and it was confirmed that the female and the young child died from a gunshot wound from a .22 caliber gun. The male's cause of death could not be conclusively decided, although it was determined that he died while he was tied up to that tree, which was on the edge of kind of like a steep hill. Mm-hmm. Sickeningly, the cause of death for the young infant was ruled as severe head trauma. All of these, of course, were then ruled as homicide. Richard and Belinda were confirmed to be the adult bodies that were found by using dental records. And so, of course, by assumption, the 2 young children were David and Melissa. Okay. So having, the family know somewhat what happened to Richard and Belinda and the kids, it answers, of course they are gone, but it does not answer the question of why and who did this. Authorities begin to question, more people again that were around the area that day. It was suspected that somebody with knowledge of the area would have committed this crime due to the bodies being found in this small cave. It wasn't very visible unless you were upon it. Yeah. They did get some information from locals. One such man had volunteered during the search of the party, or the search party for the family, and stated that he had looked in that cave that day that they were searching. So this would have been on the first day that they searched. It was September 2nd. He was able to take authorities back to that cave, so they know that it was the same cave. He claims that there was nobody in that cave. There were no bodies in that cave the day that he came across it.
Okay.
So, and just so you know, he was cleared. He was never considered a suspect, which it is questionable considering that sometimes happens when people insert themselves into investigations because they like to see what happens. Yeah. They like to... There's that thrill of everybody is out here because of something you did. Yeah. But he was considered not a person of interest at all. There was also a lead from a family that was visiting from Los Angeles. And this family stated that while they were also out there camping, they were on a walk that evening, September 1st. And they came across a pickup truck that was parked in an area. There was 2 men and a woman that were acting very odd. They acted like they were waiting for us to leave, and frankly, they made us nervous, so we moved on. This is a quote from the father in that family. They stated also that they took particular notice because it looked like the female was crying. So that brings us to the main suspect in the case, whose name is Dwayne Lee Little. And when we come back from this break, we will go into a little history on Dwayne and why authorities looked at him so heavily. Dwayne Lee Little was born in December of 1948. I couldn't find much in regard to his upbringing or childhood, but I did find mention that he suffered a head injury as a child that resulted in him having to wear a helmet for a few months while he was healing. Okay. Apparently, he took a bat to the head.
Okay. Yeah. Was this or were there any details about it?
No. Other than him having to wear a helmet, no.
Was it like family member, or was it?
No idea. The only other thing that was mentioned was that because of it, he suffered from learning disabilities and headaches.
Like someone had to have hit him like really fucking hard.
Yeah. He was only 25 at the time of the Cowden murders, but by this time he had already served 2 years in jail and 8 years in prison.
Jesus.
He had been paroled for 3 months when the family disappeared from their campsite.
What was he in jail for, though?
I'm getting to that.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Little was convicted at the age of 16 for the rape and murder of a teenage girl named Orla Faye Phipps. And Little and Orla had lived in the same neighborhood in Springfield, Oregon. Mm-hmm. It is reported that he was kind of somewhat like friends, or on friendly terms with her brother, her older brother. Orla was a very beautiful young 16-year-old girl who was described as very friendly and just very kind. She was a member of the 4-H club, her high school choir, and her local community church. And she had a love of horse riding. So she rode her horse every day, and the path that she rode took her right past the home of Dwayne Lee Little. On November 2nd, 1964, Orla was out for her usual daily ride, but she did not return in time for dinner that night. So her family obviously began to worry. The neighborhood joined in the search to try to find Orla. When only her horse was found in a wooded area, the family called the police, and the search continued. Unfortunately, not long after, in the same area, her body was found covered in thick underbrush to kind of cover her up. And the scene was very bloody. Her throat had been cut. She had been stabbed multiple times. Her body showed that the attack had been very violent. An autopsy showed that there had been a fracture to her skull from blunt force trauma.
Oh, shit.
There was evidence that she tried to fight back, as there were several defensive wounds found on her arms. And unfortunately, the autopsy also revealed that she was sexually assaulted post-mortem.
Gross.
Yeah. In an unusual move, investigators began requesting that males in the area give samples of blood, hair, as well as saliva, so that they could test it against evidence that was found at the crime scene. And they took both hair on the head and hair in the pubic area.
Off of him?
Off of everybody.
Okay.
They literally just made a plea to the community to come, any males, come and give these samples.
It's a weird request.
It's a very odd request. It was done on a voluntary basis. They cannot demand this.
No.
But it's really unusual for police to just, knock on your door and say, hey, we need you to give any males in the house to give a sample of your spit and your blood and your pubic hair. Yeah. I think nowadays that would be obviously a hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come back with a warrant, motherfucker.
Go pound sand.
Right. But back in the, this is in the 60s.
Yeah.
It was still that sense of, oh, well, if the police are asking for it, they must really need it. So we're going to give them what they need because I didn't do anything. You don't have to do anything. You don't need to give anybody anything.
Yeah.
They need to prove that they need it first.
Yep.
However, right or wrong, it probably got them what they needed in this case. So when the request was made from Dwayne's mother, when they knocked on the door, she agreed. Because her son was only 15 at the time. So she said, yes, we'll give you what you need. I'm not sure how all of this was tested. I mean, it's 1964, so yeah, they can test blood. I don't know what they would test the saliva for, what would be in it. I couldn't really see what that testing would look like. Yeah. And hair would not have given any DNA. They didn't do that yet. So it would have been like comparison, which is very unreliable from a lot of the things that I've read.
What are you even looking for?
Well, exactly, because it's generally, I don't know. Pubic hair is generally, it's pretty consistent for a lot of the population.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly they were looking for. If maybe he has a very specific color, I don't know. Maybe that's what the point was that the hair sample or pubic hair sample that was found was
very specific.
a very specific color. But also they did request blood, which they could blood type. So I'm not exactly sure what was tested. However, whatever was tested conclusively came back that Little was a match to all of this evidence that was found on her body.
Okay.
Little was arrested on November 18th, 1964. He was indicted and held until his conviction of the charges of rape and murder. So this was 2 years later on February 10th that he was found guilty by a jury. So the 2 years spent in jail was during this time. There had been some court proceedings to determine if he would be tried as a juvenile or as an adult during, these 2 years while he was awaiting trial and then on trial and then awaiting conviction and all of that. The outcome was that it would go to the circuit court, and that was an adult jurisdiction. So he was 16 years old when that decision was made. So on February 11th, just one day later after it was found that he was guilty by a jury, Lane County Circuit Judge Roland Rodman gave Dwayne Lee Little a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 10 years.
For a 16-year-old? Or now he's 18?
He's 17 at this point. Jeez. He was 15 when he committed the crime. He was, at that time, the youngest person in Oregon to be in prison for that crime, I should say, for the having a life sentence for that crime. There were, of course, appeals that made it to the Supreme Court in Oregon, arguing that Dwayne gave the collection of samples that was done without his or his parents' expressed consent. However, the Supreme Court found that this was not an illegal search and seizure, that, it was given freely, and the appeal was dismissed. So Little served 8 years of his sentence, and then he was found eligible for parole. He was paroled just 3 months before the Cowden murders. It was determined that Little and his parents were in the area that weekend, and so investigators began to take a hard look at Dwayne Lee Little for the Cowden murders, and it was confirmed that Little was seen in the area buying gas that day.
Yeah.
There is also an account that Little and his parents signed a visitor's book at a cabin on the day in question, which was within the area where the search was conducted. So within a 25-mile area. I read one account that it was 7 miles from where the campsite was. After questioning his girlfriend, it was found out that he had been in possession of a firearm, which violated his parole. Little was brought in on a parole violation in December of 1974, but he refused to cooperate when questioned regarding the Cowden murders. Investigators offered to drop the possession of a firearm issue if he would consent and then could pass a polygraph. He declined. So in January of 1975, he was returned to prison on violating parole.
Okay.
So the account from the campers from Los Angeles claimed to have seen the 2 men and the 1 woman in the truck that matched the description of Dwayne. There wasn't much else that could tie him to these crimes. He and his parents denied any connection, and they denied being in the area. And it was determined that the firearm that caused his parole to be revoked, that he apparently was in possession of from, the girlfriend's account, was a .22.
Oh.
And it actually belonged to his mother. However, when the police did get a warrant, they showed up at his parents' house to search for the .22. It could not be found. There was a record that it was purchased and it belonged to his mother, but that was as close as they came to tying anything to him.
Okay.
So unfortunately, this case went cold. It is still to this day unsolved.
That's all they got on him?
That's it. And that's why if they are holding on to something that they're not releasing, any other evidence, they have not stated it. And it's been all this time. And that's, could be rightfully so. I'm not saying that they need to release anything, but there is nothing that strongly suggests that it's him.
Yeah.
It's very circumstantial. Oh, he was in the area and he has this violent past, and a truck and the description of the 3 people match him and his parents and their truck. It doesn't mean that he had anything to do with their murder.
No.
And if he did, then where's your motive? Why would he have done this? I can see where his parents would probably lie for him. I can see that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a given, I think. But what is his motive for this? Just for shits and giggles? It's not said that he assaulted Belinda and nothing was taken. So what did he get out of it? He just felt like killing people and his parents were along for the ride. That's where I question, were they really hyper focused on him? And was there a good enough reason to do that? What was it that they may have found that was good enough to name him as their one and only person of interest?
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah.
Because police haven't released any information on it?
No. No. It's, I'll kind of give an update at the end, but yeah. So we're not done with Dwayne, though. Just 2 years after he was sent to prison on that parole violation, he was again released on parole, and he was released to the community, and he did not learn a damn thing, apparently.
Really?
Yeah. In June of 1980, a young pregnant woman named Margie Hunt apparently came into contact with Little after her car broke down near Portland, Oregon. Little drove up, picked her up, and offered her a ride. Margie mistakenly thought that she recognized him as somebody that she worked with. Mm-hmm. And so she said, yeah, can you just drop me off at the nearest phone booth so I can start calling people to come and try to help me, which he did. He dropped her off and drove away. She started calling everybody she knew, but she ran out of change. So she then kind of walked up the road to a nearby gas station, and she tried calling a few more people, a few more times. She just kept repeatedly trying to call people. Yeah. She had no luck. So, of course, this is before answering machines, call waiting, cell phones, any of that shit. Yeah, it's 1980. So she decided to walk back to where her car was and kind of wait it out. Mm-hmm. And about 20 minutes later, the same man, Little, again drove up and asked if she needed a ride. This time she decided to just have him drop her off at home. Only he did not take her home. The 23-year-old was lucky to survive after being beaten and sexually assaulted in a location off the road. When Little tried to move her to a new location, Margie was able to jump from the moving car. She rolled down like a highway embankment. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, there was little other damage done from her trying to escape, other than, of course, she was assaulted and beaten. But she was able to get away. And she was clearly able to identify Dwayne Lee Little as the offender, as the attacker. This time he was convicted and it stuck. So Little was convicted of attempted homicide. He was sentenced on November 20th, 1980 to 3 life sentences to be served concurrently. All of the appeals for parole so far have been denied. And he is currently serving out his terms in the Oregon State Penitentiary.
So he's on his first life sentence. He's got 2 more to go. Mm-hmm. Sweet.
Yeah. There has still been no movement in the Cowden family murder case. It has been nearly 50 years. So next year will be 50 years.
Jesus.
since these horrible crimes took place. And it is still being worked by local law enforcement. It's also being worked by the FBI.
Okay.
So they have asked many times that if anybody remembers anything in that, was in the area that day, remembers anything at all, it may be of assistance to them, even if you don't think it is. And they ask for people to reach out. But there is nothing new that's been released in decades as far as information. All the news articles replay the same information over and over and over again. So every few years, it's remembering this crime that took place, and probably family members are trying to get it back in the news and have it discussed.
Yeah.
It is a highly discussed case. There are a lot of podcasts that have covered it. It's in the media a lot. There's no shortage of discussion about it. There's nothing that I can see that comes out that's new.
Yeah.
So it's just very stagnant. And if the police, the sheriff, the state patrol, or the FBI have anything that they're holding on to, there's never been anybody else that's been closely tied to it or named as a person of interest or discussed like Little has been.
He hasn't confessed to it?
So apparently one of his cellmates says that he did confess to it, but of course they can't. If anybody ever tries to talk to him, he completely and adamantly denies anything.
Of course.
And sometimes you have to be careful what inmates will say about other inmates, because they might be looking for shortened terms on their own sentences.
Yes.
And
they're all very
the whistleblower. Yeah. So while there are people who, in good faith do that, and I don't know, I think a discussion for another podcast, but that's not viable proof of anything.
No.
That's hearsay. So other than that, no, he adamantly denies. He and his family were not in the area. They don't know anything about it. Wasn't them. He wasn't there. No idea. Yeah. Very unfortunate. And it I can see why he would be looked at. Even, with just the one crime that he committed, that he was convicted for.
Yeah.
That they say they have evidence that proved that he did it, of Orlefay. But being 16 and committing that violent of a crime, I wonder, was there other things that happened before that, or he just went right to that? It's a little unusual, but I can see with the violentness, how violent that crime was, that he would be heavily looked at with the 4 murders.
Yeah.
I just don't know what they have that makes him such a isolated suspect. So that's the question there. And it makes me wonder, did they focus on him and overlook something? Overlook some other people that might have been just as capable of this crime?
Yeah.
There's really no way of knowing that, I guess. And police did look at Richard, but I mean, he died tied up to a tree. You don't tie yourself up to a tree.
No. But how would he kill himself?
I don't know. They've not released how he was killed. Just that he did die while he was tied up to that tree. So he may have just been left and could not get out of the bindings. And, there again, for what? What for? So I don't know if something wasn't overlooked. And that's what I worry about. 50 years later, you're not going to find it.
Not at this point.
It's whatever possibility of anybody else that could have been a suspect it's gone,
Crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's just one of those ones we may never know. And the family, has gone on 50 years with no answers. But I'm curious to know everybody else's thoughts if you have looked at this case, because like I said, it's a pretty well-known case in this area, like for Pacific Northwest, and it gets talked about on, I've found Reddit feeds, so there's things that kind of get brought up. So let us know your thoughts. If you think he's a good suspect and they were right to look at him, or is he one of a possibility and maybe they overlooked something? I don't know. Tell us what you think. All right, don't forget, we've got our live show coming up September 1st, which is a Friday, so 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be on Instagram and Facebook. We're doing a live What the Fuck, guys. It's going to be amazing. YouTube, yeah. Didn't I say that? Did I say Facebook again?
Yeah.
I mean YouTube. I don't know why I say that. Yeah, forget that I said that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. We greatly appreciate all the support. And as we always say, be kind to one another and stay out of the damn woods.
Stay out of the woods.
Especially camping. I just can't do it anymore, I don't think.
Big enough group.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks.